Good evening, or even perhaps good morning, wherever you might be, and welcome to The Chosen One. Tonight we begin a journey through the life of a man who's lost almost everything: his family, his job, his sense of self. He wanders in darkness, unaware that he's marked by divine calling. And as with anyone chosen, the forces of evil take notice. They want his soul. They whisper in his ear, eager to drag him into despair. But through the darkness beckons there remains a glimmer of light, and one currently he can't yet see. Now I invite you to settle in, open your mind, and consider the possibilities that you too might share in a greater destiny. A greater destiny that maybe you will realize. Perhaps you feel invisible in the world's chaos. Maybe you've been betrayed, ghosted by loved ones, or tormented by daily struggles. They seem too heavy to bear. Take heart. Now, this evening's story is for the lonely, the persecuted, the meek, who suspect that life must hold something more. Now, let's begin with this story. Now, picture a rundown roadside motel on the outskirts of a weary town. Peeling paint on the walls, ancient carpet stained with footsteps of countless strangers passing through. In a dimly lit room sits a man named John Rivers. And this man's in his mid-40s. He's slumped on the edge of a creaking bed, his head in his hands. A flickering table lamp casts shadows that seem to pulse with his every ragged breath. John's story was once ordinary. He had a stable job, a modest home, a wife he loved, and a daughter who adored him. But in a matter of months, it all vanished. Laid off from work, he spiraled into deep depression. His wife couldn't cope with his distant mood swings and growing anger. She took their daughter and left. Friends slowly slipped away too, one by one, until he was alone. Now his phone rarely rings unless it's a debt collector, and most days he wonders if life is worth living. A half-empty bottle of cheap whiskey rests beside him. Its contents have dulled his senses, but not the ache in his chest. As he sets the bottle down, he accidentally brushes against something on the nightstand. And all of a sudden he reaches back again, and this is a book, and it falls to the floor, and it's laying on the carpet with a thump. It just falls. He squints to see what is it. A small, tattered Bible, one of those courtesy copies, the Bibles that are often left in the drawer. The cover's cracked, corners folded, pages yellowed with age. He hesitates, and thinks back for a moment. He was brought up in a Christian home long ago, but those memories feel distant, like they belong to someone else. Reluctantly, he reaches down, he picks up the book. It feels heavy in his hand, and as though carrying more weight than mere paper and ink. John opens the Bible to a random page. Blinking in the dim light, the words he's trying to focus are blurred. The smell of whiskey on his breath reminds him that he's not in the best frame of mind to be reading from this book. Or is he? But as he continues to strain to focus, an odd sensation creeps over him, an unease in the deep pits of his stomach. He feels as though someone or something is watching him. Now, a faint whisper snakes through his mind, so subtle, and first he thinks it's his own thought. And he hears a voice, "You're wasting your time." He jerks his head up, glancing around the room. It's just him. The door's locked. The windows are shut. Yet the whisper persists. Nobody can help you. End it now. Chills prickle at the back of his neck. Instinctively, he slams the Bible shut. His heart hammers. Beat, beat, beat. Thump, thump, thump. It feels as if a dark presence has entered the room. One he can't see but can definitely sense and feel. Is it just paranoia? Is it the booze? A symptom of stress? Alcohol? What's going on? Or is there truly something near, something dark, sinister? John rubs his eyes, trying to calm himself. And, he kind of half laughs to himself and then kind of half cries. And he's thinking, what a predicament this is. What's next, John? He mutters to himself. Are you really seeing demons now? Even so, he can't shake the feeling that the whisper was more than just his imagination. He sinks to his knees by the bed, clutching the closed Bible. He hasn't prayed in years. He thinks about his mother and all those times in Sunday school when she was working with him and telling him, and his grandmother telling him to pray. The despair compels him, and he screams out, God, if you're real, if you can hear me, I'm at the end of my rope and I can't do this anymore. Please, please help me. Silence. Nothing happens. No thunderclap, no flash of brilliance, no noise, just the quiet hum of the old air conditioner running. Yet within him a faint warmth stirs. The whisper fades. Wearily, John pulls himself up onto the bed. The Bible still in his hand. Exhaustion overtakes him. He drifts into a fitful sleep, not knowing that his plea has stirred forces far beyond this small motel room. But John, as he falls asleep, the sleep doesn't bring him the peace. Instead, John finds himself in a deep trance. A deep nightmare has engulfed his mind. It feels like an alternate to reality. Dark, cavernous, endless. He stands in a place devoid of clear form, as though the shadows themselves have substance. From his darkness steps a tall figure clad in a hooded cloak, face hidden but eyes burning with a dull red glow. A voice echoes around him, deep, mocking he feels. The voice says, John Rivers, you have nothing left to live for. Surrender. End this joke. The words vibrate in John's bones. He wants to run, but his feet remain rooted to the ground. Fear pulses through him like lightning. In his mind, images flash. His wife walking away, his daughter crying, looking at him, the humiliating moment he was laid off. These voices all hissing. You're alone. Even your God has abandoned you. John starts to cry. Tears flow in the dream. He tries to protest, to cry out, but the presence is just too overwhelming. Heavy with a demonic malice, darkness. Then somewhere behind him another voice speaks, and it's soft, gentle, yet firm. He is mine. Let him go. A pinpoint of light appears, driving back the darkness. The hooded figure recalls, shrieking with fury. John feels a surge of relief and confusion all at once. Before he can see more, the nightmare ends. And then John wakens abruptly. The digital clock reads 5:47 a.m. Pale light creeps through the thin curtains, his heart still racing and pumping. Cold sweat beads on his forehead. What was that? A dream? A warning? He notices that at some point in the night he clutched the Bible to his chest tightly. Shaky, he pushes himself upright and opens the Bible again. Deliberately this time his eyes land on the 23rd Psalm. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He reads it in a hushed voice, each word seeming to offer a gentle balm to his shattered spirit. A tear slips down his cheek. He doesn't fully understand why, but the words feel personal. They touch him just like they were meant for him in that exact moment. The nightmare's terror lingers in him, but so does the memory of that faint light and the protective voice. John's not sure what lies ahead, but a tiny ember of determination sparks with him. He vows to leave his seedy motel room today. Maybe, just maybe, there's a purpose he can't yet see, just feels it. Could he be chosen for something beyond all these failures that keep replaying in his mind? Could he be chosen? Now let's just take a moment to step back from this story a minute and let's look at the nature of being chosen. Now I want to speak to you, my friends. If you ever found yourself similar to this, on your knees in a lonely motel, real or in a dream, wondering if your life has any meaning. Now listen, take note. Sometimes those darkest moments act like a crucible where your true calling begins to emerge. In Scripture, we see time and time again that those that God selects for great things often endure great trials first. Now the devil recognizes the potential of a chosen one and moves swiftly to kill hope. Now if you feel relentlessly persecuted, abandoned by children, loved ones, friends, family members, and just weighted down by an unseen force, you might be closer to the divine calling than you think. Now listen, evil rarely wastes its energy on those who pose no threat. So if you sense a swirling darkness around you, do not despair. It could mean you are indeed precious in God's eyes. Now let's go back to our story. Let's continue with John's story in that motel room. Now by mid-morning, John gathers his few belongings, a worn duffel bag, an old photo of his daughter, and that battered motel Bible, which he can't bring himself to leave behind. He drudges to the front desk where the bored clerk barely lifts his head. The clerk says, "Checking out, sir?" John says, Yes. Handing over the key, the clerk nods in silence. No eye contact, no courtesy smile. Another small reminder that John feels invisible to the world. But something within him shifts as he steps outside into the cool morning air. He survived last night, nightmares and all. He even prayed, a thing he hadn't done in years. Perhaps the slender thread of hope he sensed is real. He starts up his old sedan car, trying to get it going, pumping the gas, and with a sigh he notes the fuel gauge is dipping toward empty. Money's tight, but he'll figure something out. He pulls onto the main road, unsure where he's going. He just knows he can't stay where he was. Now, John, after driving aimlessly for an hour or so, he notices he's almost out of gas. He stops at a small, run-down service station. Inside, the walls are lined with faded ads, and the bitter smell of burnt coffee is in the air. He selects a cheap coffee and stands at the counter waiting to pay. Now, next to him is a man in a black hoodie. There's something unsettling about him. John can't quite place him. The hooded figure, the hooded man, turns slightly and For a split second, John catches a glimpse of just a faintly red-tinged eyes. Or is it just the fluorescent lighting? The man's voice is low, nearly a whisper. "Rough morning, friend?" John blinks. "Yeah, you could say that." The hooded man gives an eerie half smile. Sometimes it's better just to give up. Life's too painful otherwise." Now John's heart just lurches. Those words echo the whispers he heard in the motel. He can't respond. By the time he fumbles for some change, the man slips away, leaving John shaken. As he exits, he glances around the parking lot, but there's no sign of this man. Had he just imagined this guy? Flickered in his eyes, or what? Now, John's nerves are rattled. John leaves that station, forcing himself to breathe. He starts his car, telling himself it was just a strange encounter. People say odd things sometimes, right? Yeah. A few miles down the road, he sees a disabled vehicle on the shoulder, hazard lights flashing. A woman stands by the open trunk looking helpless. John debates whether to stop. He's had enough problems of his own. It's hard to take on anymore. Yet something nudges him from within. An urge he can't ignore. He pulls over. She needs help changing a flat tire, it looks like, and has no clue how to do it. With weary patience, John retrieves a jack from his trunk. They work together in near silence. When the spare is in place, the woman offers him a few crumpled bills. He shakes his head. "Keep it," he says. "I just hope you get where you're going safely." She smiles relieved. Thank you, really. You've saved me a lot of trouble." And she drives away. Now John realizes he feels lighter. That this small act of kindness reminds him he's not entirely useless. Perhaps God used him to help another soul, even in the midst of his own turmoil. Now let's just take another break in between the story and let's discuss something now. Let's talk about a chosen heart in conflict. So, friends, sometimes the surest sign of a higher calling is that even in the darkest hour, your lowest moment, you still feel compelled to do good. Now, chosen ones don't always recognize themselves as such. They might feel weak, broken, or unworthy. But watch how glimmers of compassion poke through the shadows of darkness. That is God's fingerprint. You might have lost a marriage, endured betrayal, or felt the sting of children, family members who abandoned you and seemed almost not to care whether you're alive or dead. But if you still have that capacity to show kindness, even a small act, it could be evidence of a divine spark within. Remember, evil would rather you stay mired in bitterness. Yet here's John, in all his pain, stopping to help a stranger. It's quite the victory for the light. All right, now let's get back to our story about John again, and let's see where this road takes him next. Now the day wears on. John drives until he reaches a scenic overlook, just a strip of guardrail and a broad vista of rolling hills. He parks, steps out. The expanse of sky and land reminds him how small he is in this big world. Yet somehow he doesn't feel bleak. It feels freeing. He settles against the guardrail, pulling out the Motel Bible from his bag. Now he opens to a page in the Gospel of Matthew. And it says, "Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." Those words resonate in his tired soul. He yearns for rest from guilt, the regret, the nightmares. Images flood his mind: the day his daughter was born, her tiny hand gripping his finger. The arguments with his wife that escalated from minor tiffs to a big, large pile of resentment. The job he once thought was secure suddenly pulled out from underneath him. He wonders, could God still want someone like me? Yet the verse stirs an unexpected hope. It whispers that he's not beyond redemption. For a moment, just a moment, John feels peace. Then a chill just creeps up his spine. The atmosphere seems to shift as though eyes are upon him again. He scans the area, looks around. No one else around. But in the distance, concealed by the line of trees, stands a solitary figure in a dark robe. This figure is a satanic priest. Though John can't see him, the priest's gaze is fixed on him with evil intent. This priest, an agent of the adversary, knows John is more than just a broken man. He senses John is chosen for God's purposes, and that alone makes him a threat. If John fully awakens to his calling, he could undo much of the darkness that the priest and his evil minions sow. The priest looking sneers, unseen, plotting the next move. John turns abruptly as he's feeling this evil, this darkness. He sees only empty space. The sun begins to set, painting the sky in the different hues of orange and pink. Anxiety twists in his gut. The sense of being watched lingers. Now let's just take a step back from this story just a moment. Let's take just a little commentary break. Now, friends, listen to me. Sometimes you can feel this chill of evil drawing near you. No explanation, just a heaviness that warns you you're not alone. Now, we've felt that before. Many of us have felt this before. Now, if this resonates with you, consider that chosen individuals often perceive or attract spiritual opposition. Darkness tries to isolate you, inject hopelessness, and lure you into self-destruction. Now, John doesn't yet comprehend the extent of this spiritual war that's brewing around him, but he's had glimpses. The hooded stranger in the gas station, the hairy nightmare, the hidden priest. If you too have experienced encounters or coincidences that felt sinister, do not dismiss them lightly. Now, when we encounter this, we have to pray for discernment. Cling to what is good and know you are not powerless. The line between despair and hope can be thin, but it's there. Now let's get back to our story again. Nightfall finds John back on the road. He's driving without a destination until he spots another flickering sign that says vacancy. Another low-budget motel, another lonely room. He parks, checks in, climbs the worn stairs. Inside the room looks no better than the last room. The air is stale, the walls thin, yet John feels compelled to reach for the Bible again. He sits on the edge of the bed, skimming through the verses about forgiveness, mercy, and the chosen nature of believers. One passage from 1 Peter catches his eye. But you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people for his own possession. Now a lump, after reading that, forms in his throat. Could that apply to to him? Could that be me, John thinks? A man who can't hold on to a job or a family? A wave of unworthiness hits him, but also a flicker of longing. He wants to believe that there's still a place for him in God's plan. Somebody wants him. He has a purpose, something. Now, before he can dwell too long on his doubts, a sudden thought surfaces. What if the voice in his dream was right? What if God truly hasn't abandoned him? Now, he can't ignore the faint tremor of excitement, that notion that comes from within that gives him a little hope. He notices he's scarcely craved alcohol all day, and the bottle from before remains in his duffel bag, unopened. Normally he'd be drowning his sorrows, but now, instead, he finds himself flipping through the pages of Scripture, reading Psalms, words of Jesus, anything that offers promise, hope. His mind fights him. He's no theologian, and his faith is shaky. But the more he reads, the more he senses an invisible hand guiding him. A heaviness in his eyelids tells him he's exhausted. He's wore out for the day. He sets the Bible down but keeps it within reach. He shuts off the lamp. Lying in the darkness, the memory of the demonic whisper tries to surface again, but he exhales slowly, recalling the line where he heard the voice say, "He's mine, let him go." Now, just a comment on this. Let's step away from the story again and let's have a little commentary about this. Let's see where we're at. So we leave John in that dim motel room again, clinging to a worn Bible that might hold the key to his redemption. He doesn't yet realize the magnitude of his calling, or why a satanic priest lurks just beyond his peripheral vision. But you and I, dear listener, we do have a clue. John is chosen, and those who are chosen often walk the hardest roads precisely because they carry a divine spark that could scatter these shadows. Now, in the weeks ahead, we'll follow John as he grapples with unseen adversaries, inner turmoil, and the slow awakening of his faith. Dark forces aren't finished with him yet, and the call to end his life may grow even stronger. Yet, in every assault, there's a counterbalance of God's relentless grace. If you see any part of yourself in John's struggles, if you too feel haunted by regrets of persecution, by the daily grind of a world that seems to have cast you aside, know this: the one who calls you sees beyond your failures. Even if your own children, your own family, the closest friends have turned away from you, everyone's vanished. You haven't slipped from God's view. The road of a chosen one can be lonely, but it's never devoid of purpose. Now, we have questions here in this story. Will John give in to despair or discover the strength that only God can provide? Will that priest of darkness claim his mind, or will the light break through? Now join me next time here on The Chosen One as we continue this story of a broken man unknowingly bearing the mark of a higher destiny. Now until then, remember, your life matters to God. Your story isn't over yet either. In this vast universe, you may be called for reasons you cannot yet grasp. Always hold fast to hope and don't let the shadows convince you otherwise.